everybody, and welcome back to Cast Album Chat with Tyler. Today, I am going to be speaking very quickly because my last video was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be. And today we have something similar, a similar topic, just on the other end of things. And I have a lot more to talk about today. So, buckle in, because today we're not talking about the worst cast album covers. We are talking about the best cast album covers. Here we go.
Glory, glory.
As always, little introduction here. There are some things, I will always cheat on these lists because it's my channel and I can do whatever I want to do. But there are some kind of rules that I set down for myself. And that was basically, if a cast album basically has the famous logo on it, I don't really want to include it. I've got a list here. Little Night Music, Evita, both of the Follies, the original Broadway, original London, Hair, How to Succeed, Les Mis, Mamma Mia, Miss Saigon, My Fair Lady, Phantom of the Opera, Tanz des Vampires, which has the really cool like plastic vampire fangs. Anything by De Winters, basically, is off limits. There are some really great logos out there. I wrote down a few to kind of talk about just really quickly, like Cats, for example. I think it's a wonderful representation of the show. It gives you just enough. You see the cat eyes, it's very mysterious, but it has the dancers in it. So it gives you some information about the show, but not too much. But if I were to say that the original London cast of Cats has one of my favorite covers, then that would be also talking about the original Broadway cast recording and the original Viennese cast recording and the original Budapest cast recording, and you get the idea. Actually, I don't know that there's been a cast recording of Cats. Let me put it this way. A commercially released cast recording of Cats that does not have the eyes on the front. Correct me if I'm wrong, but commercially released cast recording of Cats, I think I looked at my collection, they all have the eyes on it. So I really can't say anything there. I do want to talk about logos for just a second because I love that logo. Sometimes it's hard to beat the original, but the Gothenburg Opera, when they did this, when they did Cats back in the day, I can't remember the year, has the best logo I've ever seen for Cats. I'll throw it up here just so you can enjoy it as much as I have. But that is one of my favorites, and unfortunately they did not record the show, even though they had a full symphony operatic orchestra playing along with the actors and singers. Another logo that just I love, it's one of my favorites, if not my favorite, is the revival of No No Nanette. It's bubbly, it's champagne, it's frivolous, it's 20s but very 70s at the same time. It's ticking all the boxes. But that logo was used on the original Broadway recording. Something similar was used on the London recording. The Mexican recording has something that looks like that, but is not exactly the same. And also the Italian recording. They all have that logo on there. So I wanted to, say how much I love that logo, but didn't want to add that on best cast album covers. And then finally, there's another one, Elisabeth, starting whenever the show was done in the Netherlands, has this really, really cool logo of like broken glass and on a blue background with I guess they're kind of dove wings in the shape of a heart that's red. But at the same time, the original Dutch cast recording, there's a single of the Dutch cast recording which has some extra songs on it that are not included on the highlights recording, has the same cover. The Essen cast recording, there are actually two covers for that one, one of them being the original Dutch logo. And then similarly, actually exactly the same, there is a Stuttgart mini cast recording with a few numbers on it. It's packaged in a 2 CD slim case with the original Essen production. Therefore, the cover is exactly the same, and actually the liner notes are the liner notes for the Essen CD. The only liner notes you get are actually on the CD itself, which is nothing to write home about. So that's what I wanted to say about great logos here. I could talk about logos, but I think that gets us a little bit further away from what I like to talk about on this channel, and really talking about my favorite covers. Can we judge these recordings by their covers? Is it is a cover that gets our attention, is that a good thing or a bad thing, depending on the recording itself? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Another little caveat, like I said, I'm going to be going through some of these quickly. If you want me to go back and talk about any of them, of course I can. I would like to start using my Instagram page a little bit more. So if you want me to address any of these recordings that I kind of zip through really quickly, just let me know. And then I can do a little video on Instagram or do a follow-up video on this channel. And I know I'm going to be a little offset here. Like I said, I usually use my screen back here so that you can kind of see something on my computer, but I am looking at these covers as I go through them. So I want to make sure that I have all the right information so I'm not leading you astray. So let's start with one of my favorite cast recording covers, and that would be the 2001 off-Broadway cast recording of That Boy. I don't really know the score very well. This is a cover that makes me want to listen to this show so much. And I think anyone of my age or older will probably remember the National Enquirer cover, you know, with the Bat Boy, Bat Child found in cave, you know, there at your local supermarket. So this is something that it's pulpy. It tells you a lot about the show already, that it's going to be campy. And so this is one of my favorite covers that I have ever seen for cast recording. So starting off strong here. My next cover that I wanted to talk about is the 1967 London revival of The Boyfriend. I don't know why this one sticks out to me. I definitely saw this on the J website, or TER, that's Entertainment Records website, when they did a digimix of this. And the sound quality on the recording of the Digimix is fantastic. I'm glad that it was rescued, you know, just from being on vinyl. It had not been out on CD before. So it's on demand pressed by J Records. So if you want to get it, definitely get it. It's a wonderful recording. And I don't know what it was about this cover when I saw it. I was a little bit late to the Digimix game, and so there were a few of them that were available at the time. And I kind of had to pick and choose, you know, I'll get maybe this one, and then next month I'll get this one. And this one is just, you know, once again, very much like, I don't know which one. Oh, No No Nanette. You know, this is something that needs to be evocative of its original time, you know, kind of when the show was taking place, and the present time when the production was produced, you know, to get the public's attention. And I just think there's something about these colors. They could be very 20s or they could be very late 60s. The same thing about the design. There's just something about it that really gets my attention, and this graphic in the middle is so cool. Only little thing about it, just because it is so close over here to my cabaret recordings. Boyfriend, I guess I've got Brigadoon on my By Jeeves are up with my Lloyd Webber stuff, and I really never got into Bye Bye Birdie. Boyfriend goes right into cabaret, and I think you can see kind of the image that I'm talking about. There's just, I can't look at this and not see it, so I try not to. I try to look around it. But interestingly enough, actually the three girls on this cover, their makeup looks a lot like the MC from the original production of Cabaret. So take that for what it's worth. I don't know. But speaking of Cabaret, my next cover that I just absolutely adore, if I can scroll through this really quickly, is the 1993 J Studio cast recording of Cabaret. I will be talking a lot about J Records on this video, it seems. I was kind of reviewing before. And he's produced, John Yap has produced a lot. So, you know, he was just bound to get some great covers in there, but I think he has a great eye a lot of the times for what needs to be included on a cover. Maybe not always, we're not perfect, but this one really jumps out at me. You know, the painting style, it's seedy, it's bawdy, it's a little bit naughty, but it is Cabaret to me, because it doesn't go too overboard. It just gives me the essence of Cabaret. And I think that's pretty fantastic for having an album cover for a recording that is not related to any production. So there's no physical production to even work off of as far as a logo is concerned. So bravo to the artist here. I'll have to look and see who the artist was. I know that they have done illustrations for other J recordings, and I would like to give them credit because I think that they've done some really, really fantastic work here. Kiss Me Kate for sure, Rocky Horror Show, we'll talk about it later. Also have illustrations from this artist, and they really knock it out of the park. All right, next up, we have the 1974 Broadway revival cast recording of Candide. The original, I think the original cover is really cool. It is also an illustration. You know, it's the one with all the flags on it. That one, I think it's really cool, but it sort of pales in comparison next to this this cover here for the 74 revival. It gives me Monty Python in a way. It's comedic yet menacing at the same time, and he's kind of walking on top of this. It almost looks like a semi-globe there, you know, and that really tells you about you know, the story of him traveling all over the world to find Cunegonde and happiness and the best of all possible worlds. So yeah, this is really great also because of that little bubble up top is sort of like a comic, you know, for his, I mean, it looks like it's text or something, but it's just the title Candide there. And yeah, I just always thought this one was really, really cool. And I wanted to add that one on this list. The next one is a little bit of a cheat, but not so much of a cheat, just because I think that there's one album cover with a specific logo that kind of sticks out to me. And that's the 1996 Broadway revival recording of Chicago. They've had this, this logo and this campaign for, you know, almost the last 30 years that the show has been on Broadway. And, you know, there are some other album covers, specifically the Viennese cover and the Dutch Utrecht recording that have similar black and white photos with the red text on it, but there's just something about the way that the Broadway revival cast recording is pieced together with the logo in the middle. I mean, it's just not only brings to mind that showbiz atmosphere, the backstage atmosphere, but also sort of the bare bones nature of the production. I think it's a really, really good depiction of, you know, really what you're going to be getting yourself into with this production, that maybe might not be so literal, and that, you know, we are playing within the world of theater and vaudeville. So yeah, that is definitely one that I wanted to mention, even though it is kind of bordering on the logo. Each production and each time they have new actors come in, they will take new photos of them. And I think there have been a lot of great publicity photos of many productions around the world attached to this sort of revival, this bare bones revival. But this cover for the Broadway revival is the one that really sticks out to me as being the most memorable. Next, talking about another Broadway revival, that would be the let me go down to the D's for it, Drei Groschen Oper, the 1976 Broadway revival of the Three Penny Opera. I haven't seen a lot of pictures of this physical production. It was a New York Shakespeare Festival. But the cover is just so gross and grimy and greasy, and it looks like there's like poisonous gas in the air, you know, this fog. And then there's a banner in the middle of Raul Julia, you know, with the title Three Penny Opera, a beggar, of course, there. If you know the introduction text to the show, you know, the so-called, because even a beggar can see it. There, and then you have a shadow of who I assume is Macheath there with something that looks a lot longer than just a knife, maybe a sword, but against this brick wall. It is so cool. It almost gives me Batman from the 60s, just that kind of mix of colors there, and it really makes me wish that I were able to have seen that, you know, that I were alive to have seen this production. I was not, unfortunately. Luckily, with the recording itself, it's a different translation than a lot of us are used to. It's not the original Blitzstein translation, so you get something added new there. Of course, Raul Julia, Ellen Green. Can't really go wrong with the cast. And there's been a new super audio CD version that's come out recently. Great sound quality. Cover is not as great because it has a little bit of text over some of this, but if you can get this on vinyl, it would look great on anyone's wall. Yes, I did mention the original Broadway and London logos for Follies. They're both iconic. I think they're great. I think the London one pops even more on I believe it's the CD, because I think it's kind of that shimmery silver there. Both beautiful. But the Follies recording that I would like to talk about is the Paper Mill Playhouse recording. I believe it's from 1998. Let me scroll down here. Sorry, I'll keep the eye contact while I'm doing that. I'm probably gonna miss it while I'm scrolling down. But yeah, 1998 from Milburn. The style of this art, it made me, I remember I was quite young when this came out, and I remember when it was released, strangely enough, in the small town that I was living in, they had this at the local record store. And you know, I'd known Sondheim's name in passing, but you know, as a younger person, you don't really get into Sondheim as much. I know there are some people that have been listening to Sondheim since they were 2 or 3, but I was a little bit late to the game. So I don't know, this cover, the colors, the characters on there, it is absolutely stunningly beautiful. And a lot of this art is carried through the liner notes. And I'll talk about liner notes a little bit later on, but I think just the cover in and of itself, I had to listen to this when I saw this in the record store. So huge shout out to this cover. From the 1998 Paper Mill Playhouse production of Follies. The next one that I'm going to talk about is, I've spoken about this in another video before. I'm going to be called crazy for this one, and no, it is not the finished studio cast recording of Tell Me on a Sunday. No, this is the original Paris cast recording of Hello Dolly. Yes, I know, it is Pepto-Bismol pink. But I love the painting style on the front with the caricature of Annie Cordy there, you know, tipping her hat off. I don't know, this is just something that I think is missing from a lot of cast recording covers, specifically of Hello Dolly. The show has so much vibrancy, depending on the lead actress, so much character. It's just a vibrant show, and it's so jubilant and happy. And I get that from this cover of the Paris cast recording from 1972. That's something that is quite missing in a lot of Hello Dolly cast recording covers. Specifically, I'm looking right now sort of at the original Broadway cast. At least you get the little heart with Dolly with the arrow in the corner, but very, very small. The original London cast with Mary Martin doesn't even have that little icon in the corner. The original Brazilian cast recording from Rio is a white cover, but it's basically the same thing. You get a little bit more from the Pearl Bailey recording. We do have a little picture down there of the production. But it's still mostly text heavy. Even going into the 90s with the Mexican cast recording with Silvia Pinal is very similar. And then, you know, all the way to the 2017 Broadway revival cast recording with Bette Midler, it's very text heavy. And I think that style for the original production, and then when they brought it back for the 2017 revival, was so cool because it looks like something that you would see on an old theater back in the day, you know, just names and bulbs, you know, and you throw a light on the text, who's in it, and that's the draw for the production. I think it's really, I think it's interesting that they went with that design for the original production, and it has carried through over the decades that the show's existed. That being said, I think that the Paris cast recording is probably the best cover for Hello Dolly, just because of the vibrancy, the colors, and once again, it's very evocative of the time period that the show takes place, but it's also very 1972 with that pink, so I hope everybody else likes it. Next up, we have a recording that I've spoken about many a time, and I will speak about many more times because I love it so much. It is the original Barcelona cast recording of Into the Woods from 2008. I know there was a previous recording from Girona in 2007, and this is just a transfer of that production. But I think the cover art for this one is a little bit more solid. You know, that the wolf's mouth going around the drawing of the full cast, and it makes not only, you know, the ground, and then the trees are coming out of it. And I will say that there is more art that was used in publicity for this production that can be seen in the liner notes of the two recordings. His name is Adrià Fruitos, and I'll throw up some of those images here. They're really, really cool. They're very much on the dark side, but they're still fairy tale-like. So very Brothers Grimm of him to come up with these illustrations. I just think they're fantastic. I love the cover. I love the recording. You can't go wrong with either one, but this is the 2008 Broadway cast recording of Into the Woods. Next up, in my last video, I spoke about one of my least favorite covers in the special, like, honorable mentions of a production from Austria, Gablitz, of Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. That cover is black and white, and I don't know why for a show that has Technicolor in the cover. But if you will look at the 1968 original, some people call it the consortium recording, the original studio recording, the concept album. It kind of came out of the school production that Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice put together it might have been around 1967. This was recorded in 68, I believe. But the cover of it is, first of all, in contrast to the black and white cover, is, it just kind of blows the brains out of a camera. It is so colorful. And not only that, you almost get a sense of that it's kind of like hieroglyphics mixed with comic book. So, you get the old style of the painting. Sorry. Thanks, Kat. And we're back. My cat apparently did not enjoy the way that the last shot was framed, so he decided to knock over the camera. Thank you very much, Octubre. I love you very much, but we'll have you join in the next Cats video, okay? So where was I? Joseph, 1968 recording. The colors on this cover, he's got the Technicolor Dreamcoat on. That mix of biblical and comic book, I think, it tells you exactly what the show is, even before the show really was what it currently is nowadays. The recording is about 30 minutes long. On CD, it's all on one track. It is one of my favorite recordings of the show because you get to hear how it's evolved. And even though it is a short piece, even nowadays, they added the mega mix to kind of beef it up and everything. But I don't know, it sort of wears thin quickly to me, even though there are different musical styles and whatnot. And I really enjoy this 30-minute version of the show. So if you can't, I think this one is streaming. It's probably best to find it streaming, actually. The CD is very difficult to find, but you could find it on vinyl if you want to as well. Okay, next up, this is a little bit of a cheat because it is just the logo for the show. But this is the original 1989. Let me double check. I should have scanned through here before I talked about it. London cast recording of Metropolis. I just think this one is so cool. It's so German expressionistic. It is so Art Deco. And it basically is the original kind of movie poster for the movie from 1920. I'm gonna say 1927. And whether you like the musical or not, I think that it's just a really striking image. So take a look at it here, see what you think about it, but I think it is really cool looking. Be a cat dad, they said. It's gonna be wonderful, they said. It's lovely. Well, we have another co-star this time around. But we will keep on going with some of my favorite recording covers. Next one up is the Lisbon cast recording of My Fair Lady, I believe from 2003. Let me double check here. Mamma Mia, My Fair Lady, there we go. I was right on the dot, 2003. This recording itself is not my favorite of all the recordings that I have of My Fair Lady. I think the orchestra's a little thin. Maybe the singers are not exactly what I would have expected, but this cover is really cool. And I think that this production kind of physically took its cues from the London revival from the Royal National Theatre. And if you've heard that recording, you'll know it is not super traditional, much like this one. But what I think they did best over the London production is the cover art. He's trying to chew on my new Czech Jesus Christ Superstar cover, which I'm not very happy about because it took me, only about 30 years to find it. So on the cover of this recording, it is just kind of paintbrush strokes. There's the red and the black, and then you can kind of see her face over her shoulder. I just think it's so cool. And whenever I saw this online, hadn't heard the recording yet. I wasn't really into My Fair Lady much at the time either, but I needed to get this recording, and I was very happy to have found it because I do think that the cover is quite stunning. Only thing I'm sad about, maybe the recording can match the cover and, you know, what I think of, you know, the class and the style. But I kind of almost wish this were released on vinyl because it looked really good on my wall. That's all. And I learned my lesson this time because I have already done my scrolling through to tell you that the next recording I'll talk about is the 1980 London cast recording of Oklahoma. There was kind of a wave of productions of Oklahoma during this time. There was a Broadway revival in 1979 that has a really cute cover to it, you know, where they're kind of like jumping and very happy. But it doesn't really give you kind of the dark side of Oklahoma. There is definitely a dark side, and it was very ahead of its time. So the reason that I like the cover of this London recording from 1980, which I think is inferior as far as the recording is concerned to the 1979 recording, the cover for this one, you get the sunset, you know, and I'm in Texas, and I can tell you that sunsets down here in this part of the world are glorious. You know, you just get this painting. It is a painting of the sunset, and then you have the Surrey with a fringe on top, and then you see the farms in the background, and the texture of the painting. It's so, it almost looks like it's on burlap. You know, it gives me everything that I need. And then the cover, the title across the cover is kind of like shooting up through the sky, and it gives you that sort of epic nature of I don't want to say the epic nature of the piece, but, you know, just knowing that it was so refreshingly new at the time. You know, this is something that you've not seen before. Of course, that was the original production. Many people had seen Oklahoma by this point in 1980. But this is my favorite cover of an Oklahoma cast recording, and one of my favorite covers of all time. The color, the heat, the roughness, the burlapness. It's wonderful. I love it. So the next recording I'm going to talk about is, yet again, another J cast recording. This was the 1987 English National Opera recording of Pacific Overtures. This cover, I originally got the highlights version because I think that was remastered first and was more readily available. There's the full show that was recorded that was released in the 80s. On CD, probably tape, on vinyl as well. That had the logo of it was a little bit smaller and kind of up at the top. So I didn't really appreciate that cover as much at the time. But when the highlights version came out, I fell in love with this logo. It's very evocative of the, I know I saved it here on my computer because I wanted to call it by the right name, the painting Great Wave of Kanagawa by Hokusai. It's so evocative of that, but then you get the ship in the foreground, and you could just look at it for hours and find something new every time. I just think it's a gorgeous logo for a show whose original logo really didn't do it for me. I believe it's from the dancer for the Lion's Dance, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was until I'd seen kind of the video, the broadcast of the original production. But the ship, you know, there's so many details on it, and it is just that perfect mix of Japanese and English and American, and I just think it is stunning. And you know, the cover for the new cover for the Digimix new release of the show is very similar to the highlights recording of the show. And then throughout, you know, you get that same logo a few times, like on the libretto and whatnot. But this is another one that I probably, I need to see if there is a vinyl release of the show that has just that logo on the front. Maybe the libretto that comes in it will just have the logo on the front, but dang, that would look good on my wall too. So this is the original 1987 London English National Opera recording of Pacific Overtures. I'm looking at my next one lovingly because it is already on my wall. It is the 1975 Johannesburg, South Africa cast recording of Pippin. This recording is actually really good because everyone's kind of a singer on this one. John Waters plays Pippin. Also, Pastrada is played by Joanne Pizarro, who played Evita on the original South African recording of Evita. It took me a while to figure out what city it was in. I think it was in Pretoria and Johannesburg. Anyway, back to Pippin. This cover I think is so cool. It's so graphic. Just the nature of it. It's almost kind of like the Candide Broadway revival cover. It's just you get so much. But in this case, much like the original design for the show, you get a lot of tapestry. But it's still very mid-70s, obviously, and the style of some of the clothing that the characters are wearing. It's a little bit, more pop-inflected than just a regular tapestry. But this is the best Pippin cover I've ever seen, just because, you got Pippin there on Charlemagne's crown. You get your leading player. I don't know if we get a Fastrada in there anywhere, but we certainly get Bertha over there. It's just, I don't know. It's a really, really, really cool cover. I've got one on my wall. I've got another one kind of in safekeeping. It's very difficult to find. It comes up on Discogs every once in a while. But if you can find this recording, I don't believe this one is streaming at all. But if you can find it, this is a really, really great recording of the show. And is, as far as English language cast recordings are concerned, I would say probably the closest to what the show is in performance, just because the original was on Motown Records, so that was very much, I kind of look at that as the kind of like the Dreamgirls recording, that it's not kind of a great representation of the show. So this is the one to find, or the Australian production, but it lacks the cool cover, so find this one. The next cover that I want to talk about is kind of a cover that is very similar on many different recordings of the show, and I'm talking about the show Rent. I've always thought that the campaign for the original production was so cool. It's got that, all these colors are very also evocative of kind of the mid-90s grunge. I almost get a little bit of rust from it, from some of the oranges and the reds. And interestingly enough, the 1996 Broadway cast recording, the 1999 Dusseldorf German cast recording, 1999 Reykjavik cast recording, and the 2000 Italian tour cast recording are all very similar as far as their style. They use that same ad campaign for the show. And I don't know why I give the edge to the Italian tour recording. It's just got a little bit more orange in it, and I get a little bit more of that rust, that decay, that I don't know. There's just something about it that makes that one specific cover stick out to me. So I guess I could say any of these recording covers are my favorites, but the Italian the Italian cover is the one that I kind of give the edge to in this case. Strangely enough, all of those are really fantastic recordings. Not one of them is bad. The Dusseldorf recording is live, so maybe it's not as perfect as the others, but it is a 2 CD recording, unlike the Reykjavik recording, which is very much highlights, but one of my favorite Rent recordings, as you've probably heard, and if you watch the video about Icelandic cast recordings. And the Italian cast recording is full of fantastic singers. Michele Carfora, who sings Roger, is my favorite Roger that I've ever heard on record. That one's a little bit more difficult to find, but if you can find it on Discogs or eBay, snatch it up. It is a solid highlights recording of the show. And of course, the Reykjavik recording, which has different coloring on the cover, is very solid. Also highlights streaming, and you can find that pretty easily on Discogs. The original Broadway recording, I think you can find just about anywhere, especially if you're looking at like a used record store. You'll be able to find it very cheap. And the Dusseldorf German cast recording was hard to find for a little while. I found it again when I was living in Germany, and I've since realized it's not that hard to find. So check it out on Discogs, might show up on eBay. Can't go wrong with any of those, but if you can find the Italian tour recording, definitely check that one out. And our last cover before we get to honorable mention and then my absolute favorites, because I'm going in alphabetical order, is the 2010 Broadway cast recording of Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown. I was over the moon when I heard that there was going to be a musical version of this at the Lincoln Center with music by David Yazbek. I mean, expectations were met. And then when I heard the score, also met. You know, it's a really, really strong score. The cast in and of itself, so strong. Why it didn't run longer, I don't know. David Yazbek has kind of mentioned that they got it right in London as far as the structure is concerned. But I probably listened to the Broadway cast recording more, just because that was the first one that I heard. But I will say, you know, whichever one you prefer to listen to more often, the design for the Broadway cast recording of the cover itself is hands down the best. It is basically the opening credits of the original 1987 movie without being a copy. You know, you get all these like 1940s, 50s, 60s sort of clippings from magazines. I was almost certain that this pump with a woman's face in it on the side was from the movie, but I looked at the credits the other day just kind of in passing for the original Almodovar movie, and I couldn't find that. But I think it's so cool that they got so close to the original style of the credits from the movie, but they didn't necessarily copy that. So hats off to them. I knew exactly what I was looking at whenever I saw this. And actually, it's so close. I probably need to go back and look at the CD re-release of the soundtrack recording for the movie. Maybe they're a little bit more similar, or maybe there's some overlap in the images that are used there. But it is so similar to the CD re-release of the movie soundtrack that, unless you're looking at the text on the front, this one obviously says "Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown." The soundtrack will say "Mujeres al borde de un ataque de nervios." But other than that, they're very, very similar. And I think that the designers for this logo and the liner notes, and specifically the cover for the 2010 Broadway cast recording of "Women on the Verge of a Nervous Breakdown," did a fantastic job. As in the last video, I did want to give some honorable mentions, and this is kind of where the liner notes come into play for the most part. Actually, only on two of these honorable mentions. But the first one that I did want to mention is the 2021 Ulm German cast recording of Wildhorn's Dracula. There are a few recordings of this. There's a studio recording. There's a production in Graz, Austria, that was recorded in 2007. And this 2021 recording is a full live recording, and probably my preferred recording of the show. Unfortunately, the cover is not so cute, but you know, when I did find this recording, I got it the day that it came out because I wanted to hear the full score. When you open it, on the back inlay there is this beautiful, I don't even know how to explain it. It's almost like 50s Halloween decor style painting of Dracula and Mina. And I think it's really cool. And I'm pretty sure that I have seen promo pictures of kind of the logo that they used outside of, I don't think they did this at the theater. I think there was a castle or something similar in Ulm in Germany that they put the banner outside. And I want to say they used that graphic, and I wish they had used that graphic for this. I don't know that it's necessarily a great representation of the production itself, but I just think that there's something about a musical of Dracula with a score by Wildhorn, which is a little bit kind of wild, zany. It's so on the nose even that it's almost kind of camp in and of itself. I don't know how to explain that, but if you have this recording, it's wonderful, and then you'll know what I'm talking about when you open it up. Behind the two CDs on the inlay there is that wonderful painting. The next one I wanted to talk about as far as liner notes are concerned is let me search for it right here, 1972 symphonic studio recording of Tommy. This, I believe there were actually live concerts of this version. I think it's the London Symphony Orchestra that played along with them. And interestingly enough, the cover itself, or the cover that I have, I mean, it's very much of its time. It almost looks science fiction, but it's just kind of a very shiny pinball that has the Tommy logo on it. It's cool, you know, it's fine. But if you open it up on the inside, there is a logo, I think that's on the inlay itself, is kind of a similar logo, but they're the two pinballs and have eyes on them. So it gives you the pinball, it gives you the theme of sight or not having sight. And I just think it's a really, really cool design. There are actually some other kind of, I think they're painting. One is a photo and one is a painting that I would guess is of the Acid Queen, that don't really jive with the other two images that we have there for the front cover and the inlay. But I think altogether the packaging and the liner notes of this recording are really cool. On top of that, of course, we're talking about the recordings and not just the packaging. I love this recording. There are so many epic moments in the overture alone. I mean, I listen to the overture all the time at the gym because it just, the London Symphony Orchestra, the choir, the voices, I mean, it's spectacular, I have to say. And this is probably the recording of Tommy that I listen to more than any other recording, more than the Who's original recording or any of the Broadway, this Broadway cast recording, or probably the current Broadway cast recording, which hopefully will be coming out. There is a recording that I wanted to put on the list, but I didn't think that it just had enough to make it, and I don't know why, but I just went with my gut on this one to go with honorable mentions. Was the 1962 Tel Aviv cast recording of Irma La Douce. I just think this is really cool. The colors, the style of the painting. But the thing is that I didn't know if this was a painting before it was a logo or if this was expressly created for this production. I don't know, but I think it's really cool, and I need to find the vinyl so I can put it up on my wall. I think my walls are going to come down actually from the amount of vinyls that will be hanging on them. Currently I don't have that many. I'll show you someday my little den, my collection here. But I think that the cover of this is really cool. I love the colors, and if you can find the vinyl, I think it's better, because the CD re-release has a little bit of a kind of a border around it that I'll put up here, and it kind of ruins the effect. But I think that this is a really, really cool painting that was created for, either created for this production or existed before. But speaking of the of paintings as logos, and I saw the name. I should have researched this before I did the video. I'll research it again and throw it up down here at the bottom of the video. There was a number of revivals in the mid-60s of kind of golden age Broadway musicals at the Lincoln Center. I can't remember how many they had each year. It was either 2 or 4. But we were lucky enough to have most of them recorded. And that would be Annie Get Your Gun, King and I, Kismet, Merry Widow, South Pacific, and Showtune. Unfortunately, the West Side Story revival was not recorded. I guess that might have been one of the most recent shows. They just had the 57 recording before, so if they revived it 10 years later, maybe they didn't want to have a new Broadway cast recording. But you can never have too many recordings of any show, really. But I mean, West Side Story, come on. But what makes this these covers so special is that there were paintings that were made much like the more modern Lincoln Center revivals. We've had another artist that, you know, from when they started doing their really, well, I guess they've done this for a while. I noticed it when they revived South Pacific, but I know there are productions that came before that have used the same artist in their campaign, I think to the present day. But the 60s production obviously had a different artist, and I think that these, the paintings that are used for the logos for these shows and then put onto the cast recordings are stunningly beautiful. But of course, this is not of one show or one production. This is many productions over a few years. But what's really interesting is, you know, like I said, these shows, Annie Get Your Gun, King and I, Kismet, and Merry Widow all have these paintings as their covers. Unfortunately, the South Pacific cover is not that, I'm sorry, the Showboat cover is not so bad, but it's not this same style of painting. And then there's the South Pacific cover. Whoa. I don't know why they decided not to use this painter. I think they could have come up with a knockout image for South Pacific out of all shows. I think that would have been a fantastic show to have this painting style. But it almost reminds me of that meme, you know, it's just like, thank you for whatever. In this case, it'd be, thank you for the great album cover. Thank you for the great album cover. Thank you for the great album cover. Not you. Thank you for the great album cover. South Pacific is a bit that for me. So it's not offensive enough to put on the worst covers list, but it's certainly not great compared to all the other covers that came out in the 60s. So once again, of course, these did come out on vinyl, so if you ever want to put them on your wall, you could probably find these fairly cheaply, if you could find them in good shape, and they would make really great wall art. And on this last album cover, I'm going to give you a lot of album covers from one of my favorite shows. And if you think about the show itself, what it represents, what it is, its history, its present, its future, you'll understand why there were too many covers just to pick one. So here are some of my favorite covers of The Rocky Horror Show. Going all the way back to 1973, I believe is when the original production was recorded in London. The graphic style of the logo of this show, and I think it was used on the program as well. I know that publicity for shows was not the same back in the 70s as it is nowadays, and definitely for such a small show. You know, this was at the Royal Court Theatre upstairs, so it was a much smaller theater as well. You know, maybe the money wasn't there, but I mean, this looks like an illustration from back in the day from like a concert. Like, come see this cool concert, and then just one of the band's friends would draw this. It has so many images, but you get kind of your Frankenfurter in the middle, but then you get some of the characters from the show, then you get so much science fiction movie from it, pulp, comic. It is so good. It is so good, and I don't know why I don't have that one on my wall. There is there are many covers for the London cast recording, but this I think is the original one. And there's also a picture disc on vinyl that is this image on the actual vinyl itself, so I might need to find that one. But you know, kind of moving on from there are so many covers of Rocky Horror albums that are among my favorite ever. 1976 Mexican cast recording, which I have here on my wall, is just really cool because it is, you know, you got your logo for Rocky Horror Show in Spanish, El Show de Terror de Rocky, and Julissa, the star, translator, producer, in the kind of bloody font from the movie, which I think came out the year before. What I am happy about is that they used the lips in a very, very smart way. They took kind of it's not grainy, it's almost like a newspaper graphic of Boris Karloff in the original Frankenstein movie. Of course, this is a musical about someone making the perfect man out of body parts. It is Frankenstein for a good part of the show. And it is a black and white image of Boris Karloff, but they use the red lipsticked lips there on top of it. It's camp, it's pulp. It is so good. I love this cover so much. The recording itself, much like the original London recording, is very rough around the edges. I think it lacks a little bit of energy, and is maybe not as how do I want to put it? Maybe not as specifically produced as the London cast recording. Actually, the Mexican recording is very much like the Roxy recording. It sounds like they listened to that recording and decided to reproduce that in the studio. I don't even think it actually sounded like what it sounds like on disc. I don't think is what the original Mexican production sounded like, but it's kind of legendary. It came out on CD, and you can find that every once in a while, kind of in a double pack with the original Mexican revival of Grease, also produced, starring, translated by Julissa. The next cover of the Rocky Horror Show that I wanted to bring up is the 1978 New Zealand tour cast recording of Rocky Horror Show. This one is kind of interesting because, I guess for two reasons. I had to look this one up. I want to credit them. It's ozrockyhorror.com. They have a lot of information about international recordings, of recordings, but productions of the show. Most specifically Down Under, but not only. But they did say that the image here of this Frankenfurter is actually of the actor Max Phipps from the Melbourne production. And they said they put Gary Glitter's head on this. Gary Glitter, the less said about him, the better, but I'll talk about this recording in another video because I love this recording. They said that is his head placed on the body of Max Phipps. I don't think that's true because looking at pictures of Gary Glitter from this production, he didn't look anything like this. But it's really cool, you know, that it's also that graphic nature of this, plus the logo in the background, you know, on this bottle cap that looks a lot like Coca-Cola, which I think is really cool because the original set, and especially up to this point, you know, this was 1978. So it was only a few years after the show premiered in London, and up to that point, part of the set, there was always a kind of a long refrigerator with the Coke logo on it, on the front of it. And I think that's a really cool way to incorporate that iconic piece of the set that Eddie actually crawls out of and I think goes back into later in the show, that part of the set into the logo itself. Going on into the 80s, there was a wackadoodly cover, I'm looking at it on my wall right here, wackadoodly cover of what seems like a wackadoodly production of Rocky Horror Show in Essen, Germany. This recording is special, it's all live, and you can hear the audience screaming through the whole thing. It's half English, half German. Sometimes they switch in the middle of the sentence, which is kind of a common theme for a lot of recordings of the Rocky Horror Show that take place in non-English speaking countries. I don't know why, it's weird. But this cover is, I can't make heads or tails of it. And I actually see a few people on the cover that could be a few different characters. I think I see Brad and Janet there in the background. This person in the front is not Frank. This has to be Rocky, would be my guess. Although the guy down kind of in the middle there to the side left looks like it could be Rocky 2 because he kind of looks like the Frankenstein monster. Might even be the same actor. I don't know. But it's weird. Frank is actually right behind him in the yellow caveman toga. And then this cool woman with looks like cat ears. I don't know what it is. It looks like something high fashion that Audrey Hepburn would have worn in one of her movies in the 60s. It's weird. It's wackadoodle. And additionally, this little frame around it makes it look like it takes place in a public bathroom. So, can't go wrong with this. I was happy to put this one up on my wall. I'm just kind of looking through. I did want to mention those recordings, but you have the J Studio cast recording that has the same art from the artist that did Cabaret and Kiss Me Kate. And this one's really cool too. I know some people like it, some people don't like it. I personally really enjoy it. It kind of brings back thoughts of the movie, so I think that's really cool. There's also the 1997 Bad Hersfeld cast recording from Germany. It kind of has an ugly cover to it. It's got a machine with a heart with a Spock hand kind of on it. I think it's a Spock hand as far as I can see. But on the inside of the liner notes, you actually see that at least the promo art was inspired by Giger, who was the original designer for Aliens and the Alien movies. So there's some really cool stuff in there as well. But I think the last one, the Accurati recording from 2010 has some really cool liner notes and some of the colors that they use. But the other one that I did want to bring up is the, I've spoken about this as well, the 2018 Reykjavik cast recording of Rocky Horror Show. This is a huge throwback to the movie of, kind of a throwback to the movie, because you have Frank in Colombia, Magenta and Riff Raff in a pool on the life preservers. In the movie, of course, Frank and Columbia are the only ones that are actually in the pool. But the colors on this thing, the way that it's posed, the way that the actors embody the characters in this shot, it is absolutely beautiful. And I'm kind of on the fence about whether I want to put this. I guess I could put this on the wall because I took the vinyls out, because when I have them all packed so tightly together, you get that ring wear if you have the vinyl inside. So I took those out. So I might as well just put that on my wall. It's just the whole thing is quite beautiful as a vinyl. It's released on the red vinyl and on one CD and a digipack, which I don't like. But I think this is a beautiful cover. So those, as far as Rocky Horror recordings, those are the ones that stand out, although there are some that are equally as fantastic, just depending on your taste. I think all of those recordings that I mentioned are all kind of fair or good. Some of them even great. So if you can find any of those, definitely check them out. I know I've forgotten something and I don't know what it is, but we will find out. Like I said, I would like to do kind of living lists and living videos of, these are some new covers that I have found since last time I did this video that I really love or I really hate. So I can do a little bit of an update, kind of a little update that I got. I was down in the dumps because there was a copy of the Czech cast recording, the live Czech cast recording of Jesus Christ Superstar that was on eBay. Someone posted it on Facebook, and luckily somebody from the group did snatch it up really quickly, and I think it was in really great condition. But I was a little bit down in the dumps because I had the re-release of it, that it looks basically like this. It's just the Fat Boy CD cover right here. But the cover on this one is not so great. And this is kind of the importance, I think, of cover art. There was a previous pressing of this that came out with a slip cover, like this little slip cover here. With, you know, it's a black cover. It's kind of hard to show you without the glare here. And it's not in perfect condition. It's got a little bit of, you know, folding up here and whatnot, but it's still in pretty good condition. So I will probably be displaying this up here. All that is to say, I did find it on Discogs like later on that week, which is weird because I'd never seen it for sale in 20-something years of collecting, almost 30 years of collecting. And it popped up twice in 1 week, and it was still in pretty good shape here. So I think that the packaging and the cover are all very important when it comes to a cast recording, and that's why I wanted to make these videos about my least favorite and my favorite covers. So as usual, I would love for you to leave some comments down below about your favorite and least favorite cast recording covers. That's not talking about packaging. That will be a different video that I will be making at some point in the future, but mostly about the covers of these recordings. Tell me all about it. Let me know if there's anything that you would like to see. Also, I would love it if you would just like the video, click the button down below, and most importantly, subscribe, just so the channel can grow, and then we can have more conversations and I can put out more videos for you. So thank you for your patience. I don't know how long this video is going to be, but I hope it's not an hour long. We'll find out. But thank you so much for joining me again on Cast Album Chat with Tyler, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I'm a going